was in Washington, D.C. this week, where I got to meet up with several of the nation's agricultural leaders and our elected lawmakers. I spent some time with Congressman Austin Scott, a Republican from Georgia, who is the vice chair of the House Agriculture Committee and also serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, House Armed Services Committee, and a number of subcommittees and caucuses. We talked about the Farm Bill, work requirements for SNAP, the EPA, and other topics important for the nation's farmers. I'm Sabrina Halverson. Let's get into this week's AgNet Weekly.
All right, well, let's start out and talk about Farm Bill. It is a Farm Bill year. I'm hearing talk from other people that I've interviewed today here on the Hill that it's kind of a difficult Farm Bill this year because of the political climate and how divided and some of the agendas involved politically. We're hearing a lot of talk that people are expecting it to not be passed by September when the current Farm Bill expires. Maybe there will be an extension. But there are several topics within the Farm Bill that I would like to touch on with you today if we can. And let's start off with something that's important to our listeners and people, growers in your area, and that is specialty crops.
Absolutely.
And as you know, specialty crops were not always included in the Farm Bill, not until the last 15, 20 years or so. Is there any hope of getting perhaps more for the specialty crops in this year's Farm Bill?
I would hope so. I will tell you the big picture, though, is the money. Yep. You hit on this before with the politics, the current political situation. 82% of what we call the Farm Bill, so 82% of the money in the Farm Bill now goes to SNAP benefits or food benefits. And the Democratic Party, at least a significant portion of the Democratic Party, has said that they will not accept any changes to that 82%, which means that now you have 18% of the dollars going into the Farm Bill that are left for CRP programs, RUS programs, commodity programs, crop insurance. So because 82% of the dollars going into the Farm Bill are demanded by the Democratic Party to only go to SNAP benefits, then that makes it that much harder for us to do anything for the production ag side of the piece of legislation. And so in my part of the world, we have a tremendous number of pecan growers. We have a lot of fruit and vegetable growers. Those specialty crop growers are seeing the same increases in inputs that other crops are, and they're getting crowded out because of a lack of resources. That's because of the demands of some of the Democrats that there can be no changes to the 82% of the money going to SNAP benefits. Now, what's so naive from the people who, and I'm not saying they're mean people, I'm saying they're naive, is that they're going to ultimately drive up, again, inflation in the grocery store by making it harder for production agriculture. And so their demand to put more money into food stamps may very well lead to the people who actually need SNAP benefits having less food because the groceries are going to ultimately cost more. So it's a naive position to take. Some of them are honest people that just don't understand the relationship between good farm policy leading to good production, and that good production leading to an abundant food supply, and that abundant food supply leading to a lower cost of groceries. But that's what we should be talking about as a whole, is the food supply of the United States. How do you get it onto the grocery store shelf should be what we talk about first, and then how do you get it to the people who need it and need some assistance. Talk about that in the legislation as well, and they've taken the position that any changes will lead to no Farm Bill. Let me say this one last thing about the changes we propose to make. We have plenty of money in this country to take care of anybody who can't work. I want to say it again. We have plenty of money in this country to take care of people who can't work. People who are elderly, people who are disabled, people who have some type of situation at home with a relative that they're having to take care of. We have plenty of money to take care of anybody who can't work. Our proposals say that if you're an able-bodied working age adult and you simply choose not to work, then you're not going to receive SNAP benefits over a certain period of time. And so those are the types of changes that we're trying to make that are being rejected by the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, if 82% of Farm Bill spending goes to SNAP benefits, then you're not going to have enough money to do what you need to increase reference prices and other things that need to be done because of increased cost of inputs.
I was speaking with Debbie Sapnow this morning, and she was adamant that the work requirements for SNAP there are work requirements for SNAP, and but they were paused. I would say, my word, not hers, but during the COVID pandemic, and then in July they will come back again, and then we will have these work requirements. What would you say to that versus the need for additional work requirements?
There are abuses of that system. It depends on the state that you're in. I would be willing to look at that with her if she's willing to look at us getting rid of categorical eligibility. Categorical eligibility is the thing that allowed for anyone who had a child in a Title I school system to receive SNAP benefits whether they need it or not. I know people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year who receive SNAP benefits because they have a child in a Title I school system. Categorical eligibility says that if you're eligible for one benefit, then you automatically qualify for other benefits. And so I would personally be okay with us getting rid of categorical eligibility so that you can look at it on an individual basis. But again, we've got plenty of money in this country to take care of people who can't work. No country's got enough money to take care of people who won't work. There's no doubt that there are abuses in the system, and those abuses need to be purged.
Yeah. Going back to more farmer specific topics, you mentioned that our production growers or specialty crop growers face these same problems that other growers do around the nation. But I want to ask you about protection and help for our specialty crop growers, because while they are facing many of those same problems, they don't always have access to the same programs or the same insurance that other growers do. So what can be done for that?
Well, you would have to work with RMA and actually put in a crop insurance system that worked for specialty crop growers. And right now, most of my specialty crop guys end up buying what is non-insurable crop assistance. And it does very little to help them. It is something that needs to be addressed, whether you're in South Georgia or whether you're in California. Some of my good friends who are Democrats on the committee have expressed the same desires that I have as a Republican from South Georgia about getting some type of insurance in place that helps these specialty crop producers in cases of losses. The other thing the specialty crop producers have to deal with that is even more so than your traditional row crop is the labor issue. And the challenge of getting labor in, and then we had tremendous labor rate increases in the state of Georgia, which again, all of those increased costs continue to increase the risk of actually planting the crop and gathering the crop. And then in Georgia, we have an influx of product coming from Mexico at the same time as our harvest because of where we sit in the on the parallels with them. Right. And so our specialty crop producers are having a very hard time looking at the input cost and the potential revenue from it and seeing a profit and the potential for a profit. So again, we need to have an honest conversation about what it takes to put the food supply on the shelves of the grocery store with us not being dependent on foreign sources of food in this country. And then at the same time have the discussion about what food assistance should be there for those who can't work, our senior citizens, people who are less fortunate, people who are working hard every day and are still low income through no fault of their own. I mean, we can help. We have plenty of money to take care of people who can't take care of themselves. But if we don't get the food onto the grocery store shelf, then it doesn't matter how much you give in SNAP benefits, they're not going to be able to take food home. So I think that the conversation has been reversed by the Democrats and the group on the far left, where they say 82% has to go to SNAP. And then the other 18%, about 12% of it would actually go towards support for production agriculture. 12% of what we call the Farm Bill going to production agriculture is not a square deal for the American citizens or the American producers that take a tremendous amount of risk to put the food on the grocery store shelves.
Yeah. You very briefly touched on something, and I'm not sure that this is the interview to get into it, but I wanted to just bring it back up if we could about getting food brought in from Mexico, where it is so much easier politically or in regulatory terms and in labor terms to grow a crop and to produce a crop and to export it into the U.S. and other nations, especially for states that are closer.
Sure.
Same problem in California,
Sure.
Same problem, in other states that are closer to the border. Is there a solution for that, or is there something that we can work on for that to get more of the U.S. grown crops versus Mexico grown crops on the store shelves?
It gets into the extremely complex trade-related issues.
Yep.
I think there should be some things done. They are paying a wage rate for a day's worth of labor that compares to what we pay for an hour's worth of labor inside the United States. That's not a square deal for the American farmer. How do you compete with somebody who's paying a fraction of what you are in inputs, especially in wages, when you're being pushed down by the wholesalers in the grocery stores to the lowest possible price? And so I think labeling issues are helpful, but if we're honest, most people walk in, and if there's one pack of blueberries that's $3 and another pack that's $5, they're going to buy the $3 blueberries, even if they come from another country. We have to be very careful as Americans, though, in that we don't need to become dependent on foreign sources of food the way we allowed ourselves to become dependent on foreign sources of energy. And it's bigger than just Mexico. We have to be watching what's happening with our seed supply. Syngenta Seed is a Chinese company. This is a source of serious contention for me. If you look at Kim China, if you look at what Communist China is doing in their accumulation of our seed technology, our chemical technology, if you look at what's happening inside the courts, inside the United States, I don't put it past the Chinese to fund the lawsuits that take the chemicals that we need to produce our food supply off of the markets in the United States. And to be clear, I don't have any evidence of that, but someone's paying for those lawsuits. And it's not poor people that are paying for those lawsuits. Somebody with pretty deep pockets is paying the lawyers to go to court to take the chemicals that we need off the market. And if you want to talk about it again, going back to an environmental standpoint, when you take glyphosate, when you take dicamba, when you take all of those chemicals off the market, well, I can't use no-till anymore. I have to cut the soil deeper. It's a net negative for the environment when you take the chemicals off the market, because I've got to run the tractor more, which means I burn more diesel. I've got to cut the dirt deeper, which means I have more runoff. And there's a disconnect between what is good for the food supply, what is good for the environment, what is good for the farmer, and all of those things can be accomplished in unison, in conjunction with what's good for the consumer, but not if you have courts taking chemicals off the market without regard for what it does to production agriculture.
Right. There's a balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of that, there was a hearing today with the EPA administrator, and I understand that you had a good conversation with him. Can we touch on that? And just for transparency for our listeners and for you as well, I have not had a chance to view that. So, but what was your conversation like?
Look, he's Michael Regan. He's from North Carolina. He's part of the Biden administration. I'm obviously a Republican, but here's what I'll tell you. His dad was an extension agent. And so that right there tells me that he was raised with respect for land grant institutions and what our extension agents do. Don't know a whole lot about his history. I just know that from where I come from, which is southeast, not North Carolina, but Georgia, Our extension agents are some of the best people in the world. They take care of the kids in the school systems. They take care of the farmers. And I would tell you, I think he's probably a very good man that was raised right. Would be my bet based on having a mom that's a nurse and a dad that's an extension agent. And then he corrected me and he said his dad did get called back into the National Guard where he retired as a colonel. So I give him the benefit of the doubt on a lot of things. He is. I sense some frustration with him and some of the court rulings as well. I'll let him speak to that issue on it, for himself. But I did sense that there was some frustration from him in some of the court rulings, and I do think that he understands that if we're going to have an abundant supply of domestic agriculture products, that we have to have certain chemicals, pesticides and herbicides, for us to have that. And those are extremely important to the food supply. He acknowledged that. And so he talks about basing decisions based on science. And I think that he would like to base decisions based on science. Now, I think we've got a court system that is currently saying, well, baby powder creates cancer. Glyphosate creates cancer. I mean, we got to take all of these chemicals off the market because it did this, that, and the other. And we're getting some very damaging rulings from courts that they're going to create tremendous problems for the United States of America going forward with our food supply. And I know when we talk about baby powder, that's different than than blueberries or strawberries or food, but it's just an example of how ridiculous the U.S. court systems have become.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm from California, so we have cancer warning on everything. Mm-hmm. I've had to explain to people when they walk into the airport, and there's literally a cancer warning, a Prop 65 warning on the door that you walk in when you get off the airplane, mm-hmm. that says there are chemicals in here that cause cancer. And I basically have explained it's just the entire state. Mm-hmm. It's everything.
They don't call it the left coast for nothing.
Right. Well, I told your staff that I would only take up 15 minutes of your time, and I want to be respectful of that. But I do want to give you the opportunity if there is anything else that you want your listeners in Georgia to know, or other states.
I would just tell you this. There's a lot of political discourse, if you will. Most of the people in Congress are good people. There are 435 of us in the House. You probably can't name many of us. The ones you can name are probably the same ones that most of us would like, that are actually serving in Congress, would maybe like to have a replacement up here with. But we've got a great country. We're surrounded by miracles, and don't lose faith. We're gonna be stronger when this is all over with.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Congressman Austin Scott of Georgia. This is the AgNet Weekly. I'm Sabrina Halverson. Thanks for tuning in.